Good morning. Are you ready to go over some real estate synonyms?
Yes, I need these synonyms.
Yeah, I like synonyms. And I will probably mess up at some point and say cinnamon, and I'm gonna apologize in
It's
advance.
okay. You're just spicing it up.
Oh, I see what you did there. All right. So our first synonym.
Synonym.
Well, the word is client. Do you know a synonym or another word for client off the top of your head?
I just remember it from one of your previous webinars. It was principal.
There you go. Very
Yeah.
good. It is principal. Now, if you had to explain to somebody what a client or a principal is, who is that person?
The per like you're representing
Yeah,
person you're working
it's
with.
it's the person you're working for. It's the person who you owe all that loyalty and obedience and accounting and all of those things. That's who you owe. It's if you're a buyer's agent, it's your buyer. If you're a seller's agent, it's your seller. It's the person who you are representing. Very good. All right, let's go to the next one, which is buyer's agent. There is a synonym for buyer's agent. Any clue to what it is?
I'm not 100% sure for the
And I'm
synonym.
not surprised. This one is,
Oh,
this one, and I'm going to go back because my thing is so sensitive. Here we go. Selling agent.
okay.
And I say this, and this is a big one. The selling agent is sometimes the buyer's agent, or I should say this way. Sometimes they'll use the word selling agent and they mean buyer's agent. It's like 8 times out of 10, they'll use buyer's agent, but then they give you the selling agent, and it's all confusing because
Mhm.
it sounds like the word seller's agent, right? So here's what I want you to remember. When we talk about agency, and what who you are as an agent. One of the things that can trip you up is sometimes they'll say, "Oh, are you the seller's agent or are you the buyer's agent?" Or sometimes they'll say, "Are you the listing agent or are you the selling agent?" Like I know you've taken practice questions that have used the word seller's agent, buyer's agent, listing agent. Like I think you have those. It's that friggin' selling agent that gets you.
Oh yeah, it throws me for a loop every time.
And I know that. So think of it this way in two categories. On the top, you have seller's agent and buyer's agent. And it's
Okay.
referring to who do you work for? That's it. A seller's agent clearly works for the seller. A buyer's agent clearly works for the buyer. Those people would have signed an exclusive buyer's agency agreement, exclusive
Mhm.
seller's agreement, exclusive right to sell, whatever it is. It is really clear you are team seller or you are team buyer. It's all about the who. But when you see the phrase listing agent or selling agent, that's about the action. The listing agent always works for the seller. I mean, you listed the property. You have to work for the seller. But the selling agent is the agent who found the buyer.
Okay.
It's the agent who found the buyer. Now, and I know that seems weird because we're like, well, isn't that always the buyer's agent? No, because we know sometimes you can have a stubborn buyer that's like, if you are listing my house, you're listing
Mhm.
my house, you do an open house, and PD McPeterson walks in. And if PD McPeterson walks in and doesn't want to have anybody represent him, he could go through this whole process and not have a buyer's agent, correct?
Mhm.
Well, in some states, PD McPeterson could walk in and say, "Hey, I have this agent who's helping me, but they are not my buyer's agent." And if that is the case, in some states, we allow the seller to have two agents. The seller can pay one agent who listed the house, and they can pay another agent who was the person that found the buyer. So one person is the listing agent and one person is the selling agent. So when it comes to selling agent, and we're not going to go too far anymore into agency, but selling agent could be a buyer's agent or they could be a seller's agent. but it's the action of the person who found the buyer. Does that make sense?
Yes, it's definitely something I'm just gonna have to make flashcards and just
Yeah.
go back and forth to just
Hey,
get that nailed in.
you just think selling agent, the ing is an action. And that selling agent means not the person who listed the house, but the person who found the buyer. A lot of times they're going to mean buyer's agent, but there's that small window where it could be the seller's agent too. So I know you got this picture. Take a picture with your phone so you have it. But if you ever get
Yeah.
confused, just try to think back to this chart and just know selling agent is not the listing agent. It's the other agent in the deal.
Yes.
Okay, good. I know it gets confusing, but I hope does the chart make sense? Does it kind of
It
help?
does. Yeah, I really like that chart.
Good, good. All right, next one. You got perk test. Have you ever seen this word before? Perk test.
To be completely honest, I think I've seen it a handful of times, and I'm like a deer in headlights.
That's okay. We like deer. Deer. Bambi was a deer. He was awesome. So, perk test. This has to do with septic systems. So, do you
Okay.
know what a septic tank is?
Yes.
Because if you didn't, I tell you it's how we handle poo water if you're not connected to city
How we do
water
it
and
for
sewer.
business.
Yeah, right. It's what happens. It's like what happens to your poo water after you flush the toilet. If the city is not taking it and doing something with it, then in the country, and sometimes even in cities or suburbs, you'll have a house that's not on city water or sewer. You'll have
Mhm.
this tank where all this poo water goes and then it gets dispersed back into the earth. It's like ashes to ashes, dust to dust. It just becomes natural again. Mhm. So, really, truly, a perk test is this test where they test the soil to see how much water, and by water, I mean poo water, can your soil absorb? Like it goes out of your house into the tank. It's almost like you know how you take food scraps and you put them into the compost bin
Mhm.
and then you take that dirt and then you use it in your garden. Think of a septic tank like a compost pile for your poo water. And then that water, that somewhat cleaner broken down water goes out to your yard. We got to see how much water can your soil handle. That is the perk test.
Hmm.
But the truth is that if I do this right and now show you the next card, come on, there you go. I can do it. Ah, it's going to be one of those. It's going to be a technology day. I see this now. It could be called a septic test, but the real
Okay.
name for it is percolation test. And we aren't really supposed to use perk test or percolation test anymore. It's an old term, but we still use it. It's kind of
Okay.
like we say rolling up the windows, but do you actually use a handle to roll up the windows? No, we just say roll up the windows. We may
Mhm.
say perk test, but what we mean is a percolation test, which is really a septic test. A soil suitability test is sometimes what I'll hear it as too. But if you understand what a perk test is, then soil suitability test makes sense.
Okay. So I'll just think if I hear perk test, septic.
There you go. I like it. All right, below grade. Any clue to what below grade means?
Um, Honestly, I just think of schooling. You get below your grade, but that's
You know
where
what?
my mind first went. I'm not gonna lie.
No, like I love it because when I first learned it, I was thinking like, is that like grade A meat and this is meat we shouldn't be eating? I don't know.
Yeah.
But no, below grade actually has to do with what it means is do 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 do. Let's get it to flip. Basement. So imagine a house on a hill, and I don't even necessarily mean on top of a hill like a murderer's coming out, but
Oh.
let's just say you've got a house and it looks like it's flat land in the front, but if you were to go in the back of the house, it's actually like down a hill and it
Mhm.
looks like one level from the front, but actually in the back it's two levels. Have you ever seen something like that?
Yes.
So anytime you have a wall that goes below like the ground level, it is considered below grade. So at grade is ground level. So when you look at the front of the house where that front door, is sitting at the front, it's sitting at ground level. At ground level is like right there. Above grade is like the second floor, the third floor, things like that. Below grade is anything below that grade line. So even if it's just three walls and you can walk out the basement, or if it's a completely enclosed basement that you can only get to it from inside the house, below grade just means like basement. It's
Oh,
below the grade. You're at grade, above grade, below grade.
that makes a yeah, as you started explaining, I was like, oh, I
I
see.
know.
I
I
see.
know. And that's what I don't want to happen. I would hate for you to get something wrong, and just because you didn't know below grade was they meant it was just below the soil line. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why I'm like, I'll just ask, even if it's a silly question. It's still bright
Yes.
and early up here, so
Phew, I know. I know. Protection period. Now we've
bro.
kind of changed topics because I kind of wanted to put these together by topic. So I'll give you a clue. This has to do with contracts. Do you know what a protection period is?
I is that the certain time when a contract
Yeah, you're
is
right.
safe? I don't know. Like it's I
Yeah,
don't know how to get my words out.
it's okay. I'm actually going to give you the synonym and see if it helps. An extender clause, an override clause, and every so often I've seen it called a tail clause. Do any of those sound familiar? Okay, I can tell by the look on your face. You're like, no.
Override a little. I feel like that's.
Okay.
I saw tail claws. I was like,
Yeah,
what?
tail clause is really rare. And you know me, I like to include everything just in case you get that test that throws tail clause in there. So, this is one of my original synonyms. Like when I first started teaching or doing real estate, more than a decade ago, this was my original one where I was like, man, I could see where if I learned it as protection clause and then somebody called it an override clause, I'd be in trouble. But you are
Yes.
correct. It's about protecting. It's about protecting you. So
Okay.
this is a clause in a contract. Think an agency contract. Let's say you are listing my house and it's supposed to end December 31st, and
Hmm.
you have not found a buyer for me. Well, let's say somebody comes to my door, goes and does a showing on December 30th. Or maybe I'm, in a store and somebody's like, I hear them talking and they're like, I'm looking for a house. And I'm like, I have a house. And they're like, I
Yeah.
think I want to buy it. What this clause stops me from doing is saying, hey, my house is listed now, but if you wait 48 hours until the 1st or the 2nd of January, I won't have you as a listing agent anymore. So if you do it and just wait, then we won't have to pay a commission. They're trying to basically cheat you out of a commission. Do you get what I'm saying? And this is the override clause or the protection clause. It's the clause that says, look, even though your listing ended on December 31st, anybody who saw the house or heard of the house for X amount of days after your contract is over, you still they bought the house because of your work. You should still get paid.
Hmm.
So in different states, most of the time you'll enter in how many days it is. Is it 10 days? Is it 5 days? Is it 30 days? Is it 45 days? I don't know. This is something you'll agree with your seller or buyer when you do an agency contract. But it's an override clause. It's saying, no, I realize I'm not your listing agent anymore, but this person is buying from my efforts. It basically extends that, hey, these people that saw the house while I was listing it, if they buy it after this listing is over, I still get paid. Hey, buyer, I might have shown you a house on Friday. Our agreement ended on Saturday, but if on Sunday you want to buy the house that I showed you, I should still get paid.
Hmm.
So now does that kind of make sense? Protection period, override, extender.
Hmm. Yeah.
I was going to say something else, but I don't remember what it was.
The
Oh, well.
tail, I'm trying to, 'cause I see the extender. You're just getting that extended period overriding. It's just overriding the original set date. Then I see tail clause, and I'm
Do you really want to know what I think it's there? Why it's called tail?
yes,
So,
I'm curious.
okay. So do you remember learning about you've got fee simple absolute
Hmm.
And then you have your leasehold estates, you had your non-leasehold estates. And then what we don't usually learn in real estate school is there's something called an entailed estate or a fee tail estate. And a tail estate is one, think of England, where you might have a duke and the duke has a castle. And the duke can't sell that castle. It has to go down to his family members. Have you ever heard of something like that where the
Yeah.
family has property, but it has to go through the bloodline? They can't
Hmm.
sell it to a random person. That's a tail. So it has to follow the
Okay.
line. So if you think about tails following the line, the person who found the buyer or the person who listed the property, the commissions have to follow down the line. Does that
That
make
makes
sense now?
Yeah.
Oh, I know what I was going to tell you. There's one thing I want you to remember, even though this isn't a synonym.
Okay.
Most clauses like this override clause has this little asterisk that says, this does not apply if a new agent is hired. So what this means is if you're listing my house until the end of the month, and then at the beginning of the month, I hire a brand new agent. It doesn't matter. The new agent's going to get the new buyer or whatever it is. This only works if the person doesn't hire another agent.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Next one. Agreement. I know. It doesn't seem like that's a word that should have a synonym.
I'm trying to think. My
So I'm going to say this. Do you know the essential elements of a contract?
with the parties, both parties sign or
Yeah, you're right. Like both parties need to agree, right?
hmm,
So I like to remember the acronym MCLL. There needs to be mutual agreement. There has to be consideration. There has to be legal capacity. Everybody has to be above age, not drunk, things like that.
hmm,
And there has to be a legal objective. So it's illegal for us to have a contract for you to murder my ex. Like it's actually murder is illegal, sadly. So
unfortunately.
unfortunately. So when I talk about agreement, I'm talking about that. Like, hey, in order to have a contract, you have to have agreement. The thing is, when you talk about that type of agreement, we can use different words on the test. It could be mutual assent, or it could just be assent, like we both agree. It
Hmm.
could be the meeting of the minds. It could have been the acceptance of the contract. If you're going to have a valid contract, there has to be an agreement to the parties. Everybody has to accept the contract. There had to be a meeting of the minds. They all kind of mean the same thing, but it can
Okay.
be confusing because you're like, well, what is mutual assent? Oh, that's just agreement. It's just the agreement. That makes sense?
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. Do you think this is going to help you when you're taking the test?
Yes. Very much
Yay.
so.
Yay.
That's why I'm glad to go over and ask questions. So if I see some words I may not be familiar with, I'm not scared.
Not freaked out. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and it is good. Like you can see how they kind of feel like the original word. So you can maybe take a good
Yes.
guess.
It's nice hearing it explained because then in my mind I'm like, oh, I can make those connections, write it down, and
I love
yeah,
it.
makes me happy.
All right. Let's start before the synonyms. Do you know what an installment land contract is? Does that sound familiar? Any clue?
Installment land contract. Yes, I just need to word it properly. Um, would this have to be doing with adding something new to your land, or is that
No, I can see where you
okay?
were going with that, but I'm gonna have to say no.
A for effort.
You do get an A. You get an A plus for effort. So let's say a normal closing. You are
Okay.
my agent. You put my house on the market. You find a buyer the day of closing or settlement. That buyer pays me all $600,000. We're done. They give me $600,000. They get title that day. An installment land contract is seller financing. This would be I find a buyer, and what they're going to do is that buyer is going to move in and they're going to make monthly payments not to the bank because they borrowed money, but to me. I'm financing. I'm allowing this person to slowly pay me the purchase price. So in a normal transaction, there's usually a loan, and then the buyer's making monthly payments to the bank to pay off that loan. In an
Hmm.
installment land contract, the seller is saying, hey, no bank needs to be involved. I will let you make slow payments. I'm financing this for you. You make payments to me, and then after you finish making all your payments, that's when I'll give you title.
Okay.
So, installment land contract, if you think of the word, you're paying installments. Why they call it a land contract, I guess I don't know.
That threw me for a loop.
Well, and it's funny because actually the synonyms for this is a contract for deed, just a
Oh,
plain land contract, or a land sales contract. I can be honest, I don't actually know why they call it land contract. I'm sure I'm just missing something real obvious, like, duh, Candace. But I first learned it as installment land contract, which was helpful for me because I could see installment.
yeah.
But
Mhm.
contract for deed, okay, I get that. There's a long-term contract, I guess, until you get your deed. I don't know. And this, you just know, when you see land contract or land sales contract, it's that installment land contract where you're not getting the title until you finish paying it off in the future. So different than a quote unquote normal settlement. Yay. All right, our next word. Oh, instrument. Now, I know. See, I love the looks on your face, and I know everybody at home won't be able to see the look on your face, but you're like, I don't know, instrument. Well, I don't mean like a flute or a saxophone or the drums or something. But have you ever taken a question or seen a question that will like, or a sentence that'll say, the instrument for transferring title is, or the
Like,
instrument. So when you see the word instrument, even though this isn't a synonym per se, what they're talking about is the idea of the word instrument. An instrument does something, it
mhm.
plays music. So when you see the word instrument, they're usually talking about some type of contract. So if we talk about a deed, sometimes they'll refer to the deed as an instrument. It's the thing that transfers title from one person to another. Or if we're talking about a promissory note, it's the instrument, it's the thing that creates a debt. It says the seller loaned, or the bank loaned the money, and the buyer's promising to pay it back. It creates a debt. So when you see that word instrument, even though it's not really a synonym, I didn't want you to get confused. Instrument is the contract, the thing that did the thing.
Okay.
Does that help a little?
Yes.
Cool. Yay. Because when I first saw it, I was like, instrument. And I mean, I was a band geek. So I was like, what? The trumpet? The tuba?
I was like,
I played the
flute.
flute. I'm like, the flute. And I don't know. But it's just the thing that does the thing. Like a hammer is the instrument that, or a screwdriver would be the instrument that screws in the screw. The hammer is the instrument that hammers the nail. You know, the microwave is the instrument that warms the food. The deed is the instrument that transfers the title.
Mhm.
All right, block busting. Moving on to fair housing.
Block busting. This is when person it's when they group certain, right? Am I on the right track?
Yeah, you're on
Like
the right track. Yeah.
it's not necessarily, it's not redlining because that's when they have a map and they
Yes,
block busting
redlining
when
is where they
they
say we don't make loans in this group. All right.
like communities. They're putting certain what is it? Origins, religion,
So I
race.
think you're thinking of steering. So steering, think of this.
Oh,
Steering has to do with buyers. You put buyers in your car and then you show them places. That's steering. And that's where, let's say, you speak Spanish, and so I decide to only show you houses in Spanish speaking neighborhoods. Or maybe, you're Jewish and you want to live near a synagogue, so I only show you houses that are near a synagogue. Or if, I say, oh, you happen to be Asian, so I only show you neighborhoods with lots of Asian people. That would be steering. Blockbusting is the seller version of that. And blockbusting is when you, as the agent, knock on somebody's door and you said, hey, now, I'm not a big sports fan, but I did go to UNC, go Tar Heels. And anybody that knows anything about sports know that Duke sucks, because Duke sucks. I said it. Yes, I did, on YouTube. Duke sucks. So I don't feel that much better about Patriots fans or Dallas Cowboy fans either. I just can't. So Duke sucks. So if I knock on your door and I'm like, hey, did you know that we're getting more and more Dukies in this neighborhood? Duke people are coming, and if they're not too smart, you got to go. Go now, leave now. And oh, by the way, I can help you sell. Now, that makes common sense because nobody wants to live near somebody who likes Duke. I mean, it's a school named after puke. But what if we replaced Duke with one of the protected classes? Is it okay for me to knock on your door and be like, hey, have you seen all these indigenous people moving in? You don't want to live near the indigenous people. Did you see all of these people with kids moving in? You don't want to live in a neighborhood with kids. Can you see what blockbusting? I like to think of it as breaking up the block. You're encouraging people to move because a
Yeah.
protected class is moving in.
Yeah, that makes more sense because I always have questions about blockbusting, steering, panic pedaling. I
Yeah,
just get them all confused. I'm like,
I know.
they're
Well,
all not good.
what you just said is really good because you said panic pedaling. Panic pedaling is the synonym for blockbusting. They're the same thing.
Huh.
You're selling fear. I'm trying to sell you on this fear that dookies are moving in, and that's bad. When I used to teach this in person, did you ever read the book by Dr. Seuss or see the movie The Sneetches? The Sneetches with stars on their bellies and the Sneetches that don't have stars on their bellies? Oh,
Mm-mm.
after class, I'm going to have to link you this video about Sneetches. It is so perfect for fair housing, and you're going to love it. But it's this idea that there are these creatures. It's a Dr. Seuss book, so God only knows what they look like. But you had
Yeah.
Sneetches that had stars on their bellies, and they thought they were better than the Sneetches that didn't have stars on their bellies. And I used
Oh,
to give an example. This would be if you had a neighborhood of Sneetches with stars on their bellies. I knock on the door and I say, did you see that unstarred belly sneetch moving in? Get
that
out. They're
it does.
coming. Move. You're selling panic. You're
Okay.
trying to get people to move out. So blockbusting and panic peddling are the same. So that narrows down, more things to remember. And
Mhm.
think about breaking up the block. I don't know why I think of
Yeah.
like bowling and like getting people to scatter the way you get the pins in a bowling alley to scatter. Whereas steering is what you do in a car. And who do you have in the car? The buyers. You're steering them to certain neighborhoods because of whatever that protected class is. All right.
Okay. I like that a lot more. That makes a lot more
Good.
sense.
So we're moving on to finance. You got this word borrower. Can you think of another word they use instead of borrower when they're talking about finance stuff?
The first word that came to mind is lender, but
Well, yeah, the borrower is
I,
not the lender.
yeah.
That is the next slide, though. That is literally the next word, but it's not where we're at now.
I just think I'm like borrower, lender, you're borrowing money.
Well, this one is a good. Well, the borrower is borrowing money from the lender. So those are the two different parties.
Yeah.
This is another big one.
More.
The borrower could be called any of these: the mortgagor, the payor, the buyer, the um obligor, the grantee, the maker. And you're like, what? Why are there so many words for the same thing? Do you remember earlier we talked about buyer's agent, seller's agent?
Yeah.
listing agent, selling agent. And the difference was we're referring to the person by the action or who they represent. This is kind of along the same things. If we talk about somebody being a borrower, that means they borrowed money. Well, if they're mortgagor, now we're talking about the mortgage or deed or trust. And you give, if you're the borrower, you're giving that mortgage to the bank. That's the thing that creates it as collateral, right? So you're giving the mortgage to the bank. So different action, a different part of the borrowing process, but you're giving the mortgage that makes you the mortgagor. You're the person giving the payment, so you're the payor. The person receiving the payment is the payee.
Hmm.
Usually you get a loan because you're buying the house. You're the buyer. You're the person who is giving the obligation. Like you're giving, you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You
Hmm.
would have been the grantee. The seller granted you ownership of the house. You're the grantee when it comes to the transaction,
Hmm.
right?
I
And the
saw, I saw,
maker, well, that's okay. You're good. You're making the loan. Like, do you know what I'm saying? You're giving that promissory note. So I don't know. But what were you going to say?
I remember watching a video on Prep Agent, and they made us comment like how to remember between OR and E.
Hmm.
You think happy. It's like you're happy because you're receiving.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. You're
So
happy because
that's
you're
why I'm like,
receiving.
okay, receive. Yeah.
So the or is always the giver, and the E is always the person receiving. So I usually tell people to remember lessor, lessee, because most of us have rented an apartment or a house or something. When
Hmm.
you are renting an apartment, are you the lessor or are you the lessee?
Less
E.
see.
Yeah, you're the lessee because you receive the place to live, and the lessor is the landlord. Or if that doesn't work, think vendor. If you're, and I know it's an ER instead of an OR, but if you're the vendor, are you the person giving the thing that's being sold? Or are you person receiving the thing that's being sold with a vendor?
Giving.
Yes, because you're the person, you have something to sell. Maybe you're selling, I don't know, lotion. Hmm. You could be a prostitute. Maybe you're selling yourself. I don't know. But if we're talking about lotion, you
That took me off guard.
you know I have no good common sense. So we've got
Oh.
the vendor, because you know you go to a carnival or you go to a marketplace, the person that has the lotion that's for sale, they're the vendor, which makes you the vendee. They're the person giving, you're the person receiving, right? So the or and the e. Now I did hear a really cute thing that I love. The mortgage e is never me because the mortgagee is da 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 the lender. The mortgagee is the lender. Because
Oh,
remember, if you go to buy a house, you go to the bank to give a mortgage. You're giving a bank a piece of paper that says, sell my house if I don't pay you back. That means the buyer is giving the piece of paper that makes the collateral, and the lender is receiving the piece of paper that makes the house collateral. So the mortgagee is never me.
mortgagee. I like that.
I do too. So they're the payee, they're the person receiving the payment. So the lender, if I can do it right, come on, Candace, there we go. The lender is the mortgagee, the payee. They're also the beneficiary. And that one, I need you to like in your notes, beneficiary is lender. There needs to be stars, asterisks, everything, because that beneficiary thing, it gets a little confusing. And it has to do with title theory states. So, do you remember in title theory, you're using a deed of trust? It's a three-party money borrowing system. And in a lien theory state, it's two parties. In a lien theory state, you've got the lender, you've got the borrower, and all the bank can do is put a lien on your house. But in a title theory state, we treat owning and having a house loan like having a car loan. You know, in a title theory state, just like with the car isn't yours while there is a loan, the house isn't yours when there's a loan. But in that title theory state, The borrower gives money to the trustee using the deed of trust. And then the bank is the person who benefits if the trustee has to sell the property because you stop paying. So in
Yes.
a title theory state, you've got the borrower, you've got the trustee, and then you have the beneficiary. The beneficiary is the lender, the person who benefits from the foreclosure sale in a title theory state where they used a deed of trust. Sounds good? Sounds familiar?
Yes.
Yay. All right, next one. Due on sale clause.
Sorry. Had some movement here. Freaked me out.
If I see somebody behind you, I'll be like, girl, run, run, girl,
I'll start
run.
blinking. I cannot. I'm not sure of a synonym.
Okay. And I probably should have done this one opposite. What if I told you the other word for this is the alienation clause? Does that sound familiar?
It's ringing a bell.
Okay. So, alienation clause, due on sale clause, they're the same thing. And they have to do with clauses in the promissory note. So, we know promissory note is the word promise. You promise to pay, it's what creates the debt. But when you're borrowing money for this house, there's this clause in the promissory note that says, hey, if you sell the property, if you sell this property, then you need to pay us back everything that you still owe us. We know we said you had 30 years, but that was if you owned the property for 30 years. If
Mhm.
10 years later you sell it to somebody new, pay us all the rest of this loan now, which is why we call it the due on sale clause. The
Okay.
the balance is due on the sale if you sell it. So if
Okay.
you alienate yourself from property. So when you learned in like the chapter with deeds and title, it was alienation. You alienated yourself from the title. So the alienation clause, you alienate yourself from the title, pay us everything. Due on sale, you sell the property, pay us everything. They are the same thing. Due on sale clause, alienation clause.
Okay.
All right. Our next one is a deed of trust, which I know we just talked about. I just want to make sure that you know that a deed of trust is, I hate that my mouse goes away and I can't see it. The deed of trust is also known as the trust deed. Deed of trust is also known as a trust deed. Interest only loan. Now, luckily, that definition is really easy. I mean, I'm not going to say easy, but it's a loan where instead of when you make your monthly payments, you're paying principal and interest. You're making payments that only cover the interest, which means at the end of the loan term, you would have a balloon payment. So you only paid interest every month, but then 5 years later, even though you've paid interest, you haven't paid a single dime towards principal. So you would owe them the entire loan balance at the end, interest
Yes.
only loan. Any clue to what else that could be?
Mm, would it be negative?
I think you're thinking of negative amortization. So
Yes.
negative amortization is similar in that they both have a balloon payment. And negative amortization, you're making payments, which could be principal and interest, but that payment doesn't cover everything you really should have been paying. Like
Okay.
amortization means to kill off slowly, and in a truly fully amortized loan, every payment is the same amount and it's at this amount so that when you get to the last payment, there is no balloon payment at the end. That last payment, if you made every single amount like payment and did it, it's a perfect, like it's like um 4 divided by 2 is 2.
Mhm.
Like it's perfect. There's no remainder, right? A fully amortized loan has no remainder. Like 25 divided by 5 is 5. There's no remainder. If I do
Yeah.
26 divided by 5, there's a remainder, right? So fully amortized means there's no remainder. Each of those payments are perfectly priced so that there's no remainder. A negative amortization or a negatively amortized loan seems like a mouthful means,
Yeah.
yeah, we know what would have been the perfect amount, but in that month or in some months, you paid less than that. So you owed X to make it even, but you paid a little bit less than X. And that little bit of less than X that you still owe, tax on to the end.
Okay.
Right. So good word though. Negative amortization is a good word, but an interest only loan could also be known as a term loan or a straight loan. This is another one of those, like my original, hey, these are some acronyms you have to know. Because if you understand the concept of an interest only loan, you're like, great. But term loan, straight loan kind of don't sound like they have anything to do with interest only loan. They do. I mean, but that's what they are.
Yeah.
It just, these are two words that you have to know mean interest only because they like to test you on interest only loans, but not all the time do you get told that it's a term loan and a straight loan. So this is another wee remember me, remember me. I wish I
Mm-hmm.
could do that on your test and be like, wee did you see the word not? Did you see the word accept?
Highlight it in red.
Exactly. I wish they would let you, and I don't know if they would, but I think if I were taking this test on the computer today, I would ask, can I bring like a highlighter or like a dry erase marker that I can write on
Yeah.
my screen and then wipe it off? I'm pretty sure the answer would be no, but just think how awesome that would be if you could
That would
write
be
on your
cool.
screen and like point things out. I don't
That
know.
would be nice.
It would be nice. All right, let's go to our next word. Ooh, promissory note, which we've talked about, is the thing that creates the debt. It says, hey, I'm borrowing money from you and I promise to pay you back if 5% interest in 20 years, blah, blah, blah. But did you know they could also refer to it as just the note or the bond or the financing instrument?
Huh. That that makes sense. I like the financing instrument one,
Yeah,
that
we
one.
talked about the
Yeah.
instrument.
Mm-hmm.
And again, you're reading the question. If you call it the note, they're like, what? We're like, is this an instrument? Is there sheet music? I don't know. Oh,
Yeah.
you mean the promissory note. Okay. The bond. Oh, you mean the promissory note. And it's kind of like, why can't you just say what you mean?
Oh, they like to throw us for a loop.
Sometimes. And in some areas, it's kind of, I like to think of it as I'm from Michigan originally. So I call it pop when I'm at home. So I
Mm-hmm.
went home recently, and when we're recording this, it's around Thanksgiving, Christmas. So when I went home for Thanksgiving, I was like, hey, can I get a soda? And everybody kind of looked at me. I was like, all right, not in the South right now. Can I get a pop? And it just depends on the area you're in. Like, what do you call the thing at the grocery store when you push it and put your groceries in? Is it a cart? Is it a buggy? Like, what do you call it? Yeah, some places call it a buggy.
Oh, we just call it a cart.
Yeah. So just what do you call the remote control? The remote control, the clicker, the like different places call it different things.
Yeah.
And that's what we go with. Like some people call the water fountain the bubbler.
Oh, I kind
I
of like
know.
that.
I
It's
know the
different.
bubbler. I know.
Sounds so fun.
Like,
I
do you
like
call it gym shoes? Do you call it sneakers or tennis shoes?
tennis shoes.
Other places, like it just kind of
That's yeah.
depends. And I think of that with the synonyms. Some states might often refer to it as the bond, and other states call it the note. Or and so
Mhm.
you kind of want to know these things so that you don't get the question wrong. I see you with your green Stanley. Hmm.
Yeah, I got it for my birthday. I joined the club.
Oh, hey, it's a good club to be part of, and it's
Yeah,
a weapon in case you're ever attacked.
very true.
All right, our next word, security. Now, don't think like, oh, I'm in a maximum security jail, but think loans, the security.
Um, mortgage.
Well, you're not wrong. The mortgage is the piece of paper that puts a lien on the house that makes the house security for the loan. So you're
So what
not
lien?
wrong, but think of it this way. It is the
Oh,
security is the collateral. The house is the collateral for the loan. It's the pledge, it's the guarantee. these words can be used kind of interchangeably,
Okay.
right? I think collateral is probably the most common one.
I like collateral, yeah.
I do.
Collateral damage.
That's what I was thinking. Great minds.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Friendly foreclosure. Let's talk about what it is, and then that might make sense to why we call it the other thing. So, any idea what a friendly foreclosure is?
Um, is that when you're I know I'm just gonna listen because
Okay.
I think
It's look, some days you just need to listen. And I like to talk, so it's all good.
today works. Yeah, today's one.
So, think lien theory. Would you agree? Because we said it earlier. In a title theory, it's like owning a car, where it's not your car until you pay it back. But in a lien theory state like Florida, that is your house. And all you gave was a mortgage that said, hey, bank, you can put a lien on my house. And if you want to sell it because I go into foreclosure, you have to wait for a court date, that judicial foreclosure, in order to sell the house. That all sounds familiar, right?
Yeah.
Well, like when you think back to the Great Recession, which you were so young for, but like in 2008, 9, 10, 11, in those years, there were so many foreclosures. And
Mhm.
people, like in Florida, they might call you and be like, hey, we're foreclosing. But unfortunately, the first date we can get for with a judge in order to be able to sell your house is not for 12 months. It's not for another year. It's as soon as we can get to a judge. They can't foreclose before they can get to a judge because it's your house.
Mhm.
Well, what if you said, let's say it's me, because I won't put you through foreclosure. Let's say it's me.
Oh,
I might call the bank and be like, you know what, bank? You don't even have to wait for a judge. I know I owe you money. I know I owe you money. So here are the keys. Here's the deed. It's yours. You don't have to wait for a judge to go through the entire foreclosure process. I just, here, take it. A friendly foreclosure. Now, the reason this is important is because I like to teach when people go through a foreclosure, I should say this, when title goes through a foreclosure, it's like going through a dishwasher. So if I was getting foreclosed upon, and let's say you bought it at a foreclosure sale, what you're getting is good, clean title. What I mean is, if my title, when I had it, had some old back taxes and some mechanics liens or other types of liens on it, when it goes through foreclosure, what the person buying at the foreclosure auction is good title. Those things that were special, lien, not special liens, specific liens, things that were attached to the house, those get cleared off and they become liens against me, general liens. You get
oh,
good title. All of that happens through the dishwasher process of the foreclosure. In a friendly foreclosure, there's no judge for it to go through the dishwasher. So the bank would be taking title. And if there are any past taxes or mechanics liens, that's the bank's problem because they didn't go through foreclosure. It's like avoiding foreclosure. Right? So the other name for a friendly foreclosure, and now this should make sense, is deed in lieu or foreclosure. I'm giving the bank my deed in lieu of them having to go through the foreclosure process.
I see.
Yay. And what I'm hoping is, I know you won't remember all of these off the top of your head, but I hope if you go to take the test and you see deed in lieu of foreclosure, you can be like, oh, that makes sense. Deed in lieu of foreclosure, friendly foreclosure. Like it kind of connects. That's
It's
what I
the
want.
white flag and
Yeah, the white, I like that. The white flag in the foreclosure process. You don't have to wait for a judge. I just give up. Here, take the deed. Let me be friendly about it. We don't have to go to court and see a judge. So I
yeah.
like that. I'm gonna think of the white flag from now on. And then that makes me think of the song by Dido, and then I could just go down all sorts of tracks.
Go down the rabbit hole.
I like a rabbit hole,
Me
rabbit
too.
trail, rabbit hole. I don't know. So next one, factor. Now think real estate finance math. Factor.
just is such a not an ideal word for me. I just think of math. I'm like, oh, my whole body. I'm just like, no, it
You did
hurts.
so good when we did our math together. All right, so I'm going to tell you what it
That's true.
is. It is that rate of P&I. The factors are the numbers in that amortization chart. Hey, you're going to pay $4.67 per 1,000 that you borrowed. Now that sounds familiar. Yep. So
Yep.
just remember, it's the just like you have a rate of taxes. Oh, your taxes are 32 mils. Oh, you're going to pay $1.27 per 100 of the assessed value. Your factor is the fancy word for the rate of principal and interest payment. Just like dozen is a fancy word for 12. It's a synonym for 12. Or they could literally write it out what it is. You're going to pay $4.67 per 1,000 borrowed. That's that chart that we went over where it had all those numbers. Now you're like, I can see it in your eyes. You're like, oh, yeah, I knew
I
that.
remember this.
Yeah. All right. Next one, Fructus industrials. I love the looks on your face. I love it. You're like, I don't know. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and give you the synonyms for this because I think it might help. Fruits of industry,
Okay.
crops, or implements. That makes more sense now.
Fruits. I like that one. Fruits of
Fruits
Ind.
of industry. Which
Yeah.
fructus industrialis, fruits of industry. And this all has to do in a certain situation. In a certain situation, that situation is rented farmland. We're not talking about farmland if we're talking about a sale. We're talking about rented farmland. So imagine you decided to become a farmer and what you want to grow. Oh, I'd be so happy is mulberries. I love mulberries and they're so hard to find. You decide to be a mulberry bush, or you could have trees. You're going to have this orchard. Maybe you have some blueberries, some blackberries, and some strawberries too. We'll just make it a berry farm because berries are
Love
the
it.
best.
They really are.
Mhm. So if you're renting this farm, let's say the blueberries are ready to be harvested in May, but your lease ended in April. You would have spent the first part of that year nurturing that crop, taking care of it. Yes, the blueberry bush, the mulberry trees, they're all in the ground, making them fixtures. I mean, they're part of the land, but you cultivated them with the whole point of them being a crop that you would go then and sell.
Hmm.
It's just that your lease ends before you can harvest your crop. So, because it's a crop and a leased farmland, there are laws that say you can go back and get that crop. We are going to consider those crops to be your personal property that you can go back and get. Now, side note, there should be an attorney involved in the lease to talk about how this is going to work.
Hmm.
But the fact that you can go back and get your crop is called an implement. And then the crop itself is called the implement. And they're fruits of industry. That crop was for industry, not for personal enjoyment. Fructus industrialis.
Okay, that sounds better.
Yeah. And then there's also a fructus naturalis, since I don't think I included here, but fructus naturalis would be any of the plants that are not crops, like the oak tree, like the dandelions, fructus naturalis, fruits of nature.
Natural.
There you go. Moving on to estates, non-freehold estate. Do you remember the other word for that?
On freehold. A s-
What's the contract you sign when you're renting? What's the
the
word for the
lease.
contract? Yes, a lease. So a non-freehold estate is also known as a leasehold estate because freehold means ownership. So a non-freehold means you don't own it, which means you are leasing. Non-freehold, leasehold.
Don't. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Right. Next one. A fee simple conditional estate.
That is a
So the
mouthful right there.
it is, and you have to say it with a little very terrible British accent.
I
Fee
loved it.
simple conditional estate. I sound like Julia Child. I don't know.
Okay.
So I'm going to tell you what it is because I won't strain your brain this early in the morning. So the fee simple conditional estate means I give you a property, but your ownership is limited.
Okay.
I say, you know what? And I talk about my mom. I love her, but she doesn't drink. So my mom would be the person that would say, "Hey, you can have this land as long as you don't drink any alcohol on it. The minute you take a sip, you've broken the condition."
Hmm.
Like, that makes sense. You no longer have the right to own it. So there's a condition on your ownership.
Okay.
And that's, I mean, because if you think about that chart, you got fee simple absolute, which means you would own it. You and your heirs would own it forever and ever and ever. You are given this ownership of this property, and there's no rules or anything. If you choose to sell it or give it away, that's on you. A fee simple defeasible estate is where your ownership could be ended, a defeasible estate. And there's two types of defeasible estates, the fee simple conditional and the fee simple determinable. And both of them, defeasible means defease, defeated, your ownership could be ended because of some rule you didn't choose. You could possibly own it forever as long as you don't break those rules.
Hmm.
So the fee simple conditional can also be known as a fee simple with a conditional subsequent or a conditional estate. I love that they all have the word condition in it so you can
Okay.
kind of see how they tie together.
Yeah.
And then the sister or the sibling to a fee simple conditional is the fee simple determinable, which, spoiler alert, the fee simple determinative, which you get that determine word in there. So that's cool.
Okay. Okay.
Now, here's just a bonus lesson. Do you know the difference between the fee simple conditional and the fee simple determinable? You're like,
Uh,
no. So here's what I'm going to say.
powerful.
And I think this is one of those small things that they could test you on. I'm not going to say it's rare. It's one of those details. And you've heard me say before, the devil is in the details. So if you had a test question that really dug down deep, the difference between these, they're both the feasible estates, meaning you could possibly have title forever. But if you break one of these rules or conditions, then you won't have title. Think of determinable, think of that D, think of the word duration. If
Okay.
somebody gives you a property and says you can have it during this time period, you can have this property while you're in med school, you can have this property as long as the river runs through the property. Like when it's related to time, or there's a time period, something that has to do with maybe like until something happens, during something happens, as long as something happens, a duration, determinable. That's what it means. So you can have it during this time period, and when that time period is over, it automatically reverts to the original grantor. Conditional says there's a condition that has to be met. But if you do this, you'll lose it. But only, only if this is happening. That's a condition that has to be met. And in a
Okay.
conditional, you have to go to a judge. They have to get a judge. They go, "Hey, judge, did you see they lost this? They don't meet this condition anymore." And then the judge goes, "Okay, we'll give you back the land." Does that kind of help the duration versus it's a condition?
Yes.
Yay.
Yes.
All right. Next word. Do you know the other word for restrictive covenants? Do
I
you
would
know what
love,
restrictive covenants are?
I would love to learn.
I love that attitude. So, restrictive covenants. Have you ever lived in a neighborhood or known somebody who lived in a neighborhood where the HOA, the homeowners association, will say you can't paint your house red, or you can't have more than 3 cars in the yard, or your grass has to be more, can't be higher than X. Or my favorite is if you have trash day on Thursday, if your trash bins are out longer than 24 hours, we're going to fine you. Like there's neighborhood rules like that, which we know are appurtenant, meaning they
Hmm.
run with the land. Those are restrictive covenants.
Okay.
Now, the thing is, they can also be known as protective covenants. It just
Okay.
depends. If there's a rule that says you can't paint your house chartreuse, like that bright tennis ball yellowish color, like
Uh-huh.
if you're the one that wants to paint your house that color, you think it's restrictive. Your neighbors are thinking of it as protective. Same thing. It's how you look at it. Sometimes you can hear them called CC&Rs,
Mm-hmm.
covenants, conditions, and restrictions. What can you do and what can you not do with your land or your property? Usually when I see CC&Rs, I think commercial, but some states call even your neighborhood ones CC&Rs. And some places will call them negative covenants. Because again, if you wanted to paint your house that ugly colors, you're looking at it negatively.
Mm-hmm.
But they all mean the same thing. Those rules about the neighborhood or that real estate that run with the land. Speaking of estates, let's go more towards the leasing side. A
Okay.
tenancy for years. So remember, a tenancy for years is when you have a begin date and an end date. And when your end date hits, you got to go. You don't get to stay. You don't get to just, roll over into another period. This is just that set time period, which is why it is also known as an estate for years. So tenancy for years, estated for years, or an estate for term. And I like the phrase estate for term better because tenancy for years and estate for years, I think makes people think, oh, it has to be longer than a year, but it has nothing to do with actually how long. An estate for term, I think, is a better phrase because it's saying it's one term. Like if you were voted mayor, you got voted in for one term. If they don't vote you back in, do you get to stay?
Nope. You're
Nope.
out.
Begin date, end date, you're done. That's like this lease, which is different than a periodic tenancy
Mm-hmm.
where it just keeps rolling over. Oh, you're just going to keep doing it. So a lot of apartment complexes, oh, we have you here for a year. And unless you tell us, we're going to put you in for another year. And unless you tell us to cancel it, we're just going to put you in for another year or a month to month or whatever, where it just keeps automatically renewing until somebody stops it. An estate for term, like getting voted mayor, one term and you're done. If they
Yeah.
vote you in again, then you have another term and then you're done. If
Well,
they vote you in again, then you have another term. Vacation rentals are like this. When you have a vacation rental, you have it for a week, get out because somebody else is
mhm.
going to come in after you. You don't get to just, oh, I think I'm going to stay.
No.
No,
But
I think you're going to get evicted.
yeah. Will not end well.
Will not end well. Exactly. Will not end well. All right. Special warranty deed. So the special warranty deed is when I give you a deed. I'm the seller, you're the buyer. And I say, look, I can tell you that I didn't mess up title, but the person before me was a little shady. So if somebody comes knocking on your door saying something's wrong with the title, I'll cover it if it was me. But if it's the person before me, I can't help you. That's a special warranty deed. And it's also known as a limited warranty deed. Now, the next word, general warranty deed. Do you know how a general warranty deed differs from a special warranty deed?
At the tip of my tongue, because I just watched a video on it going over the warranty
It's
deeds, but
okay.
I it
Well,
slipped.
don't forget, I'm also throwing a whole bunch of words at you from different topics. Like we're jumping around. So your brain is like, it's a lot. And that's okay because you're going to watch this later and be like, oh, yeah.
Like I recall.
Mhm. The general warranty deed is when I give you a deed and I say, hey, if anybody comes and knocks on your door and says, I gave you bad title, it doesn't matter if it was me that messed it up or the person before me that messed it up or the person before that or the person before that or the person before that. I am promising that you're getting good title. And if I'm not giving it to you, then I'm going to make it right. So special warranty is limited to, and you know how I used to think of it is and I still do on my slides when I teach this class, I have what do you call it? An hourglass.
Okay.
Like they measure time. The special warranty deed is about time. I'm only giving you promises during the time that I had it, special warranty. And I always think of the hourglass as days of our lives. And all those people, bless their hearts, were so special in their drama. They were like, I know that sounds awful. And that's just, my grandma so call somebody special. Oh, they so special. Hmm. And so I would always associate special warranty with the hourglass because of time. And the hourglass reminded me of days of our lives, and those people were special. I know I just went all the way around my elbow to get to my butt, but that's how I used to remember it.
Yeah, I like that.
I just, and these are the days of our lives. I don't know. I just felt like it would be dramatic and there'd be a special warranty deed in there. I don't, Call me crazy. So a general warranty deed covers everybody in history. I'm covering everything. And that can also be known as just a warranty deed. Or if you want to get real fancy with a 75-cent word, full
It's
covenant and warranty deed.
very prestigious.
It is very prestigious.
Mhm.
It's like people who say, hello, I have a law degree. I'm an esquire.
I went to Stanford.
No, shut it. Although, did you know that I am also an auctioneer? So I could be called Colonel. Colonel Candace.
That's
Yes. Hmm.
that's fancy.
It is fancy, but then I feel like I sell chicken and I let it go. All right. Our next word, think zoning, master plan.
Master plan, because that's just keeping everything so it goes smooth, right?
Yes. Well, that's the kind of the definition. So when you
Yeah.
look at zoning, and part this area over here is residential and this area over here is commercial. That didn't just happen. There's a master plan, which is also known as the comprehensive plan.
Okay.
And cities, so like Tar Heel, UNC, Chapel Hill. In 2020, I was able to look at a comprehensive plan for 2030 that was made available like in 2010. They knew in 2010 where and how they wanted the city to grow. So that when people were like, oh, I want to build an apartment complex or I want to put in, we just got a Wegmans, there was a plan way in advance that was for the betterment of the community. Hey, we want to make sure, if the hospital's on the east side, maybe we should not put the Walmart right next to it. Like they have a plan how they want this municipality to grow. And it's not something they just do once a year. It's a
Mhm.
master plan, it's a comprehensive plan, which is how they help decide what should be zoned what and what should be allowed when and where and things like that. So, master plan, comprehensive plan.
Those two fit well together.
They do. It's so comprehensive. It makes me
Mm.
think of Pinky and the Brain. What are we going to do tonight, Brain? Like, yeah, I like Pinky and the Brain. Pinky and the Brain. That you're welcome. That song's going to be stuck in your head all day now.
It is. I'm gonna be working just
Sales comparison approach. So we have clearly switched over to valuation. Sales comparison approach. Do you know what the other name for that is? I'll tell you.
okay.
Market data approach. Because both of them are looking at sales or the market data and
Yeah,
saying, hey, if I want to know how much this house is, A, let me see what B, C, D, and E sold for. You're comparing market data, you're comparing sales comparison approach, market data approach.
that makes sense. Yeah.
But can you see how if you hadn't had this, you might have seen market data approach and been like, what is that? I don't remember that. But now you did learn it. It's just being called something else.
Mhm.
Like tennis shoes, gym shoes,
Sneakers.
sneakers. You know it. Economic obsolescence, which has to do with the cost approach. Economic obsolescence is when we say, okay, we're going to depreciate because of an outside factor. Like there's nothing wrong with the house itself, but you live across from a dog food factory and it smells. That's economic obsolescence. But did you know that economic obsolescence could also be called economic depreciation, locational depreciation, or environmental depreciation? Like obsolescence and depreciation can kind of be used interchangeably, but economic, locational, environmental, all of them are about outside factors that are affecting the value of that property.
Yeah, I like that because yeah.
Our
Environment.
next one, this one, so we talked about the market data approach, which is, or the sales comparison approach. This is one way. We talked about a synonym in the cost approach, but then you have the income approach. And one of the things that you get in the income approach is this word cap rate, which you might have also been seeing called the capitalization rate. And sometimes when you're doing math, they'll call it the rate of return. But overall, we know if we're talking about the income approach, when we're talking about value, we can find the value using the cap rate by taking the net operating income, NOI, divided by the cap rate gives you value. And the cap rate, just think of it as the rate of how money is made.
Okay.
It's a rate of return. Oh, it's a rate of return. So cap rate, rate of return, capitalization rate. This is the second to the last word. I'm so proud of you because we've done so many words.
I love it.
Plottage value. Do you know what plottage value is? Okay.
I'm gonna listen.
Okay. I'm okay with that. Have you ever gone to a store like a Target and there'll be the clearance at rack? And on that clearance rack, there'll be this earring that should have been two earrings, but it was just one earring. Like somebody stole or they lost an earring. So where the pair of earrings would have been $14, you can get one earring for $3. Does that sound familiar?
Yes.
Because there's more value in two earrings than there are in one earring. But it's not like they're selling it to you for $3. Three plus three, if there was two, is six. But they would have sold you the set for 14.
Hmm.
That's plottage value. The idea that if you have these two individuals, when you put them together, they're worth more than just the individual prices combined.
Okay.
Well, now let's put that in real estate. Let's say we are living in a neighborhood with restrictive covenants that say you can only build on something that's at least a quarter, I'm not a quarter, a third of an acre. If you want to build a house in this neighborhood, you have to build on a lot that's at least a third of an acre. Now, would you agree that a quarter of an acre is less than a third? Yes.
Yeah.
So if you had an empty quarter acre lot, it's not buildable. You might sell that lot for 5,000.
Mm-hmm.
But if next door there was another quarter acre lot, also worth 5,000, if you bought the neighboring lot and put those two quarter acres together, you now have a half an acre buildable lot. And we're not going to just charge $10,000, 5,000 and 5,000. No, this is a buildable lot. We might charge for this half acre 40,000 because it's a buildable lot and it's bigger than most lots in the area. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yay. But I think the earring one makes more sense because who doesn't
That
like
I'm like,
earrings
oh,
at Target?
I see that all the time. It's like, oh,
I know. It's like who stole just one earring? Who was the heathen? But
I'm
now I
like,
get just one, especially since I have like three holes in one ear and one hole in another. I'm like, I sometimes just need one earring.
yeah,
So,
makes sense.
so plottage value can also be known as enhancement value.
That, yeah, I see how that
It's like
connects.
adding them together enhances the value more though, more so than you would have thought. Now, this is our last card and it's a not. It's a not synonym. I wanted to end on this thing is not a synonym. Value is not the same as price. Value is not the same as price. And I know a lot of people think they are synonyms, but when you are taking this test and when you are doing stuff in real estate, having to talk about appraisals, it is not the same. And here's why. Oh, no, that's not what I wanted. Okay, we'll go back. Boom. I don't know why. So when we think of, and let me make sure I just really don't have, there it is. I don't know why it skipped it for a second. I was like, I thought I had a slide for this. When we talk about appraisals, an appraiser comes up with the value. The price is what somebody is actually willing to pay it for it. And it's
Mhm.
not the same. So let's say you are listing my house and you're like, Candace, you have such a unique house. Let's get an appraiser out to see what the value is. And that's going to give us comps and we're going to know what our competition is. Yay. The appraiser is going to come back with an appraisal report that says your house is worth $650,000. Boom. As my agent, can you promise me somebody is going to pay 650,000 for it?
Mm.
Because an appraisal is just that appraiser's opinion of value. It doesn't mean that the rest of the world's going to see 650. So the value may be 650, but what we can actually get somebody to buy it for, maybe interest rates went up, maybe the market's going down. I don't know. But if the best we can sell it for is 635, that's the price. Value is what the appraiser thinks it's worth. Price is what it actually sells for. So it is a not synonym.
It's a no.
It's a no-no, which is why we are ending on that note because it is different. Did this help you? Did this kind of give spark some ideas so that you'll maybe remember them on the test?
This really did. My final question would be if there's potentially somewhere I could find a list of
Yes, actually,
goodies.
let me show you where you could do that. Now, I have one. I like lists. I think you know that I like lists. And so I do have a list of these synonyms, which you
Ooh,
should be able to see in a second. Let's see. There it is. Wait, can you see it?
yes.
So I call this my essential list. And part of my essential list is the fact that I give you some synonyms. Like we did not go over all of the synonyms I have by far. Like I have a ton of synonyms. Like we did do blockbusting as panic peddling, but sometimes points can be called prepaid interest.
That's
A
a
bridge loan can sometimes be referred to as a swing loan or a gap loan. So there is a lot more. If you want, I can give you access and you can buy this list, but it's not just these lists. I love this. Now, I prefer if you did it yourself, but if you're feeling a little lazy or if it's just a lot, because there's a lot here, this packet is also going to include your acronyms because IRMA, intent, relationship, method of attachment, adaptability, or some people learn it as Maria for what is a fixture, or maybe you learned about ocean for adverse possession. So I put all your acronyms or mnemonic devices together. And then I put what else is in this thing as I scroll? Oh, I gave you a list of all your statutes, acts, and laws because now this is on a national level, but if you think it'll help you, these are those national laws that you have to know.
Mhm.
And then I gave you, oh, my screen. It's like I sound like the days of Christmas. On the fifth day of Christmas, my free bucket came to life.
Yeah.
You got your testable dates and numbers. And I would encourage you, if you get this, I did national numbers. Put down the numbers for your state. Like
Okay.
how many continuing education hours do you need? How much does it cost to renew your license? How many hours of education do you need to be a broker? How much are if you have fees that you have to pay the commission? Any of those numbers, like what is the definition of a timeshare in your state? Put those numbers together. So that way, if you get a question wrong or right, like you can find all those numbers all in one place.
Mhm.
I got you those word abbreviations because Lord knows there are a ton of abbreviations. It's like
Whew.
DBA, DD, DOM, ECOA. It's like a whole language.
Yeah.
Even just look at all of these abbreviations. They expect you to know.
Bananas.
It is. It's bananas.
Be-
Bananas. Second song in your head. And then I end it with your math formulas. So I got math formulas for how to do algebraically all these problems. But my favorite, is that it includes the math formulas, like not the math
Yeah.
formulas, but these buyer debit, buyer credit, seller debit, seller credit. If you're struggling with your valuation or taxation, like anything like that, your geometry, all together in one place. So I want you to have stuff, but I want to make sure, do you feel like this is something that you would use?
Oh, 110%.
Then I will send you a link for this and I will give you the super duper, you are an amazing student discount. And you'll see it because
Thank you.
well, I want you to study and this
Yeah,
thing will make it easier. And so just so you'll see it again on the screen, look at all of that. Oof, I did a lot of work for this one.
that
So
is,
this
yeah.
can save you some study times. I do think I call it the essential list because all of these are essential. So I'll make sure you have them. But most importantly, are you feeling better about some of these synonyms?
I feel so much better.
Yeah.
Honestly, I feel a lot better.
Good. Well, I'm so glad that this can help you. And I'm so excited for the next time we meet. And I will see you then. Okay.
Sounds good. Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye.
Bye.